Alright, so today's build is going to be a little bit creative, a little bit different to what you're used to, and I just want to show you what's going on with the build because it's a little weird, but it works. So take a look here. I'm going to get a kill with my melee. I'm going to go invisible. I'm going to kill here. I'm going to go invisible again. I'm going to kill this guy. This guy's weakened. I'm going to repeatedly kill these weakened enemies. And then, on the left of your screen, what do you see? Devour. Yes, dear viewer, we have Devour. I can continue triggering it. And if I do like this, I also have on your mark times 10. I can keep going, and my melees themselves are going to be doing a lot of increased damage. Oh, just lost it. Never mind, get it back. Easy peasy. So we have Solar Hunter with 2 void buffs, or no, 3 void buffs. We got Devour, we got Weaken, we got Invisibility, all going on under the same roof, and that is exactly what I'm going to be showing you guys today, how to achieve this build, and why it is actually one of the more powerful hunter builds that I've used in Renegades. So, for starters, why does this work? Well, it's because of a few artifact perks this season that actually synergize incredibly well together and work on any class that has access to void debuffs, and that is these 3 right here: Power from Pain, Singularity Blade, and Void Infestation. Power from Pain is going to make it so rapid final blows against weakened combatants grant you Devour. So that's how we were getting Devour, but how were we weakening them in the first place? Well, the second perk, Singularity Blade, while you have a Void Elemental buff, melee and sword hits weaken targets, while melee and sword final blows create a weakening burst. Then finally, Void Infestation, defeating a weakened target spawns a tracking projectile that weakens other targets, so just more weaken. But the question remains, where are we getting our Void Elemental buff from to allow us to weaken targets? Well, that is going to be from Assassin's Cowl. You know, it's been a while since Assassin's Cowl has been the centerpiece of any hunter build. In fact, it's been many years. However, now it actually makes a lot of sense to pair with these artifact perks. Singularity Blade is going to make it so our sword damage also weakens targets when we have a Void Elemental buff, which is going to work with the lightsaber or the Praxic Blade. So all of this together is what I'm going to be showing you today, how to best optimize it, how it all works, and you'll be seeing in the gameplay in the background that this build is actually pretty powerful. And if you build into your Praxic Blade correctly and all of the rest of your subclass, you'll have a very strong build that is good at healing, has plenty of damage resistance, and is also just very fun to play. So without further ado, let's get into it. And if you enjoyed today's content, then a like and subscribe is very much appreciated. So just back to the basics for a second. Assassin's Cowl is a very old hunter exotic. In fact, it came out in Shadowkeep, and it makes it so powered melee final blows grant invisibility and restore a small portion of health and shields. It also applies to finishers, but you're not going to be getting those terribly often. So we're just going to get a kill here, and then it is going to make me invisible for 10 seconds, which is pretty good. And that void invisibility, despite being removed when you exit, will actually apply to the first tick of damage from the knife, which is going to allow it to weaken the enemies, then spawn the tracking projectile from Void Infestation, as you can see there. And then all I need to do is get multi-kills on these weakened enemies, and then I'm going to be granted Devour eventually, as you can see there. Now I have Devour, gives it to me for 5 seconds, but if I continue getting kills, it'll go all the way up to 10 seconds. And I can also use my lightsaber here, because this will also weaken targets. I can use it versus higher health ones. That is essentially the main idea of the build. It requires a little bit of setup, and there also is an element of setup with on your mark, but I can go over that in just a second. Alright then, so taking a look at our subclass, we are going to be on Solar Hunter today. I did want to make an excuse to use Solar Hunter, especially because of the stacking healing benefits and weapon stat you get with on your mark, and of course all of the buffs that have happened to Marksman Golden Gun and your throwing knife melees, which actually makes the neutral of this build a lot nicer. So we are going to be using Marksman Golden Gun because I believe it got a 39% damage increase. I'll have the actual number up on screen just so you guys can know, and it does a lot more damage now, plus it applies Scorch as well, which interestingly actually allows your Marksman Golden Gun to stun unstoppable champions. Not something you'd be using it for terribly often, but just thought I'd point that out. Dodge, we are going with Gambler's Dodge to get our knife back if we ever end up losing it, and for the knife itself, I'm going with Knife Trick because I think this is probably the best melee for Solar Hunter. It feels the best, and it also does a lot of damage, plus it got a 50% damage buff, I believe, in the Renegades patch. Again, I'll have that patch up on screen for you, but I believe it was 50%, so it's going to be hitting a lot harder now. After that, we are taking the healing grenade because any other grenade doesn't really matter. And then for the aspects, the first one we have is Knock 'em Down. This will make it so while radiant, final blows with your equipped throwing knife fully refund your melee energy. So this is basically what allows us to, you know, do our melees over and over again. It's the classic Solar Hunter loop. Basically want to have this on most of your Solar Hunter builds. Plus, it also gives us a longer lasting golden gun, which is nice. Then the actual more important aspect is going to be on your mark, because this also received a bunch of changes back in Ash and Iron, and now it says activating your class ability or landing precision hits grants you and nearby allies increased reload speed and weapon stat for a short duration, and it stacks 10 times. And then Final Blows, while at 10 stacks, Cure you. So Cure, by the way, is a plus 60 HP heal, and Devour is 70. So if you have both of them going at the same time, each kill gives you 130 HP back. So Devour is actually slightly stronger than Cure ×1, which is the amount that you get from On Your Mark, but together it makes for a very potent healing combination as long as you're getting kills. Furthermore, when you are at 10 stacks of On Your Mark, you also gain plus 50 weapon stat. It's 5 per stack, so that's going to increase, your damage that you deal with things like the Praxic Blade, and it's also going to allow you to spawn in enhanced ammo bricks to give you more ammo to your special weapons. But the main reason we are taking this is because of the healing when paired with Devour. It's just a very good amount of healing that you get from kills when you have both of them going at the exact same time. Now, for the fragments, the first one we are taking is Ember of Torches. This is going to allow you to have the key interaction with Knock 'em Down, where while Radiant, you get your knife back if you get kills with it. And then second, we have Ember of Char. This is going to make it so your solar ignitions spread Scorch to affected targets, and as you'll be seeing from the gameplay, we are causing a lot of ignitions, and the reason for that is because of the impact core on our Praxic Blade. But we'll get to that in just a moment. This will make it so when we are getting those ignitions, it will make it so we can get more afterwards because their Scorch is already applied to any adds that weren't killed by the blast with the first one. Then third, we're taking Ember of Singeing to make it so our class ability will recharge faster when we Scorch targets. This is just nice to get our dodge back, so if we ever run out of our melee, we can get it back instantly. Ember of Ashes to let us get those ignitions faster. In fact, it will make it so we apply 50% more Scorch in most cases, which is pretty good. Then finally, we have Ember of Eruption, which will make it so our solar ignitions have an increased area of effect, which is pretty nice. Much bigger explosions, very good to have on a ignition focused build, which actually is very true. One of the main focuses of this build is getting constant ignitions via our Praxic Blade. Like I said, you'll be seeing through the gameplay, this is the main weapon that we are going to be using, full stop. And before we get into how I've spec'd mine out for this, I just want to talk about stats for a second before we move on into our weapon and artifact perk selection. So stats wise, because this is kind of half and half a melee build slash setup for your Praxic Blade build, we do want to make sure that our melees are doing a decent amount of damage. So what I've done here is I've gone for 140 melee plus 2 melee fonts on my gloves, which will effectively put me up to 180 melee when I am holding armor charge. 180 melee is going to be an additional 24% damage to our melees, which is pretty nice, and it is multiplicative stacking. Then after that, I've gone for 70 grenade, which is just for cooldown sake, 100 super to maximize the amount we get from all sources. Then I've also gone for 50 class and 100 weapons. Keep in mind that this is actually going to be 150 weapons when we have On Your Mark going at the maximum stacks, and I've also gone for a weapons font on my boots to get me to 170 weapons, then a class font on my class item to get me to around 70 class. So you can make it up a lot with the fonts versus your natural stats. That's the freedom that Solar Hunter gives you, especially with regards to the weapon stats and On Your Mark, which is pretty nice. Overall though, most important stats are getting a bit more melee over 100, so around 140, 100 super. Then if you didn't want to bother with the weapons, that's fine, but just get your grenade and class to 70 at least to kind of manage your cooldowns. That's what I would do for my stats. In terms of what my armor pieces are, which give me these stats, my Assassin's Cowl is a Grenadier with a tertiary stat in melee. My gauntlets are Gunner with a tertiary stat in melee as well. Then my chest piece is a Specialist with a tertiary stat in super. My boots are Brawler with a tertiary stat in super as well. Then my cloak is a Paragon with a tertiary stat in weapons. So back to the setup I have for the Praxic Blade, and a couple things are pretty important for this. One is that you use the defensive form, because what this is going to do is it's going to increase your guard resistance and guard endurance by plus 40. In fact, if I hide my camera here, you can see on the stats below that if I was to take off defensive form, I would lose 40 for both guard resistance and guard endurance, which basically means you can hold your block up for a lot longer, which is quite nice. So yes, that's why we are taking defensive form. Then for the actual blade focus, I have gone for Forceful Blade 3, which I believe you earn from the Pikers. I could be wrong on that, but it is one of the syndicates from Renegades, and this is just going to improve the impact of my sword. That is, this perk doesn't really matter as much. However, what does matter more is the power core that you choose to input, which in this case has to be the impact core, because this is going to make it so when you deal damage with the light attack, it is going to apply an elemental effect that matches your super, which in our case is going to be Scorch. So we are going to be causing an ignition with every sword combo that we do. So if I was just to show you on Carl here real quick, if we do 1, 2, 3, and by the end of it, see, we already have an ignition. We don't even need to do, overhead swipe. With just 3 hits, that should be enough for an ignition. Let's just try it one more time. 1, 2, 3. Here we go. there's the ignition. So you don't even need to do the overhead, just keep that in mind. And by the way, that is only possible because we have Ember of Ashes to increase the amount of scorch we deal. Finally, the catalyst for your lightsaber should be the Hyper Blade. The reason we are taking this is because it says reflecting shots causes you to become amplified and grants this sword increased lunge distance for a single swing. So you get the Eager Edge type effect, but you also get amplified, which will make it so enemies will be less accurate when targeting you, and it'll give you a 15% damage resistance. It should be no secret by now, amplified is one of the strongest elemental effects in the game, and if you pair this with Devour times 10 on your mark, all of the associated healing effects that we get with it, this setup is very good for staying alive, especially in a pinch. You know, some of the gameplay you're seeing in the background is from Heist Battleground Moon, where the enemies hit really hard, and it's honestly pretty difficult to survive. This build just about manages with everything that we've got going on, which is pretty nice. Now for our secondary weapon, I've gone for the Yeartide Apex, and the reason for this is because it's really good at stacking on your mark all the way to full if you just want to get it really quickly for God knows whatever reason. You can't get it from your knives, you're in a pinch or whatever, but because it is just a very high fire rate weapon, if I was just to fire at Carl's head here, as you can see, I get on your mark times 10 literally instantly. So, you know, I can just fire 10 bullets and then there we go. Don't even have to worry about setting it up. So this weapon is mainly here as a setup piece for the rest of the build. And, you know, if you have the role of Heel Clip Chaos Reshape, that's nice. Mods wise, I would also suggest going with Opening Salvo, because this will make it so when you equip the weapon, it'll just make your next shot unstoppable. So what this perk is going to let me do is when I equip my SMG, I can just shoot a few bullets into this unstop and there we go, it's stunned. And there's also Overload SMG this season, so you can have both anti-champion perks on the same gun, which is pretty nice. I just have that because obviously the sword isn't unstoppable by nature, it is anti-barrier. However, with the impact core, it also allows you to stun unstoppables with the ignition. So both of those do work together. If you see here, I can do 3 swipes, cause ignition, and there we go, it's also stunned. So you have plenty of anti-champion capabilities in this build if you spec into it correctly. Okay, so circling back to the artifact, we did of course go over the main loop, which was Power from Pain, Singularity Blade, and Void Infestation, like I showed at the beginning. But there are a couple other perks which help with the overall sort of tidiness of this build. The first being Kinetic Synthesis, to make it so kills with our lightsaber create those small kinetic bricks, which will give us a bit more ammo to keep us sustained. Then we also have Armor Smith, to make it so breaking a combatant shield temporarily grants us damage resistance and increased melee damage. I believe this does not apply to the lightsaber itself, but I think it would to our knives, which is pretty good. Plus the damage resistance is just good to have on a build that is generally a little bit more squishy. I've also gone for Combination Argent Blade, which will increase the damage of our sword for just doing the combo. This is something you don't even have to worry about. Then finally, Riposte in column 4, to make it so shortly after guarding with the sword, your light and heavy attacks stun unshielded combatants, just to use against unstoppable champions if you are going into an activity that has them. You could easily swap this for Swordstorm combo though, but as I said in yesterday's video, I don't actually like this mod because of the sound that it makes. It's just a little bit jarring, so I choose not to use this. It's not too much of a damage increase anyway, but if you can push past that, then, you know, go for it. So as far as the mods on your armor are concerned, for the helmet, we are taking 1 copy of Ashes to Acid so that kills with our melees get our super back faster. Gone for a Kinetic Siphon so that when we get kills with the lightsaber, it makes orbs. And then for the last, it doesn't matter, I just have a special ammo scout on here if I end up playing with teammates. I have 2 melee fonts on my gloves to increase my melee stat by plus 40 to let my knives do a little bit more damage, then 1 copy of Heavy Handed. For the chest piece, we have resist mods, just match these to whatever activity you're doing. Then for the boots, we have stacks on stacks so that every time we collect an orb, we get 2 armor charges, a weapon font to get plus 20 to our weapon stat, then recuperation so that we get more health when we collect our orbs. Finally, for the class item, we have 1 class font, again for the plus 20 in the class stat, Reaper, and Powerful Attraction. Okay, so as far as the optimal gameplay loop is concerned, you really do have to think of this as just, I need to complete my setup first, then I can get into the main gameplay loop of the build, which is just spamming the lightsaber. So with this setup, you have to make sure 2 things are happening. You have to make sure you're at 10 stacks of on your mark, and you also have to make sure you have Devour, because Devour is going to allow you to, you know, apply Weaken with every hit with your sword, which is fantastic. So to get to times 10 of on your mark, that's easy. You can do it through melee kills, through the headshots you get, or you can just use your SMG to stack it up nice and quick. There you go. As you can see, I'm at times 10. Once I'm here, every kill is going to refresh it and heal me, so that's half of my healing. But now I just need to focus on getting my Devour loop going. So killing every weakened enemy that I see, enough of them in time, and there we go, now we have Devour. So after we have both of those things set up, we can now get kills with our lightsaber and just not worry about anything else. The setup portion is complete, just go to town with your lightsaber after that. But yeah, that is essentially it for the build. It is very fun and takes a little bit of setup, but I will admit that in that setup period, it is a little bit on the weaker side. However, you do have the benefit of void invisibility so that you can prepare your melees, be ready to stack up everything properly. Not the greatest damage resist hunter build in the planet, but if you get through the setup phase, you are rewarded with the amount of damage and crowd control you are able to deal with your lightsaber. So it is very much worth it if you can get through it. Now for the fashion here, I'll have this on screen if you want to copy. I was kind of inspired to make a sort of dark guardian, sort of super black hunter look with the red lightsaber, you know, if it looks all right, you know, copy this if you want to. And the mobilitics link for the build will be in the description if you want to go and take a read, more detailed view, and get the dim link and everything, etc. So yeah, that'll be all for today. Thank you very much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the build, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now, dear viewer.